Good morning, folks. Again, this is Daniel Fitzgerald doing one more short video. Today's date is August 31st, 2024. I want to make it clear, I just posted another video. It's 18 minutes. You might want to look it up. Those of you in the Canadian government who are seizing my videos for yourselves and your Nazi security officials only. I want to make it clear to you that a couple things. I make this statement to the UN also, to the United Nations in New York, the Security Council, excluding the Americans, the French, and the British. I'd like to indicate, and I forgot to put this in my 18-minute video, I didn't think of it. When I turned on YouTube this morning, when I got up and I turned our terribly hacked iPhone 15 on, and I went on YouTube, I was scrolling down and I saw this question. As you know, they post questions on YouTube. I don't know who posted it, but there was a yes or no answer to this question, and I chose yes. Is something to the effect, do you believe the Western states are Nazifying? Yes or no? Now I posted yes, so I hit the yes, and when you hit either one, yes or no, then it's indicated how many people agree with you, or what percentage. And so when I hit yes, it was 91%, which means that somebody has posted this survey on YouTube, and a lot of people have answered it, and 91% of them say yes, Western states are Nazifying. This is why it's utterly important for me to go out with my signs on October 1st, because Canada's government are Nazis. They've been Nazis for a very long time. This could even go as far back as my colleague Simon Wiesenthal. We're going back to a time period when a lot of you young people weren't even born, to 1980, when Simon Wiesenthal was interviewed by Fifth Estate here in Canada. He had went to a Jewish attorney general for the province, I believe, of Ontario, named Gabriel Kaplan, who was Jewish, and he tried to appeal to him to get Canada to pull up its socks on the issue of Nazi war criminals. The United States government at that time in Washington opened up some kind of special investigative body at the Department of Justice to research and find, see if they could find illegal Nazi immigrants into the United States that entered under false pretenses after World War II. And at that time, the United States had about 1,100 suspects. I think they had stated 500 or so were confirmed, okay? While Canada had none. And this is over a 6-month period. Canada was supposed to join in on this franchise of going after former Nazis of Nazi Germany that immigrated here. I would say more of them immigrated here than in the United States. The United States was a bit more risky at that time. So I would say that Canada had more of them than the United States did. But anyway, in 1980, Simon Wiesenthal told Fifth Estate in an interview, the interview also included Gabriel Kaplan was in it, and he was making statements about supporting Simon's initiative to hunt Nazi war criminals in the United States and Canada. Gabe Kaplan agreed with Simon. He was going to do what he could. He mentioned that in the interview, how he was going to work with the federal government on what he referred to at that time as the RCM, which is the Royal Canadian Mounties. I guess at that time it wasn't RCMP. It was, Well, none of that came to fruition. Simon Wiesenthal indicated that he would not visit Canada, primarily because they were protecting Nazis. That's why the federal government at that time on Parliament Hill were dragging their heels, because they were protecting them. And they continued to protect them. And so in regard to this, when we look at the Honka matter in the House of Commons, and them all clapping for him, even Melissa Landsman, a Zionist Jew, who's related to me by blood only, because I consider her to be a monster, actually. And she is a monster, and so is Paul Evans, Stephen Harper. The point being that they all clapped for this Hunka, who obviously was 90 some odd years old. He'd been in Canada obviously a very long time. He was probably, Simon Wiesenthal stated that in Fifth Estate 1980 that he gave 3 names to Gabriel Kaplan at that time of Nazis that he knew lived in Canada, and one was in Vancouver, the other one was somewhere in the prairies, maybe Manitoba, and there was another one. And they both agreed not to disclose these 3 Nazis' names publicly, and I believe that one of them was Hunka. Okay? That's what I believe. So the entire Parliament Hill's official position is to support and to back up Nazi immigrants into Canada to this very day. And one has to wonder how many of them are now in their late 80s, 90s, who are still alive here in our country, probably hundreds, okay, that the government of Canada and all its opposition are covering up. The support on Parliament Hill, there's no question, the Russian Federation knows this as well as I do. President Vladimir Putin knows this. Mr. Medvedev knows this. Sergei Lavrov knows this. I'm sure Ambassador Stepanov here knows this. All of the Russian diplomats here know this. I know this. Canada has become a very dangerous state for its people based upon Nazi policies. And let me read to you. I say to you people, you see what's going on in the UK, right? We all see it. I refer to the Prime Minister of the UK disrespectfully and absolutely with intent that he's Der Stürmer. Mr. Der Stürmer is like him, not Mr. Starmer. Der Stürmer. And I'd like to read the reasons why. Here is the Reichstag fire decree. I'll read it again to Prime Minister Trudeau and Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Singh and the Bloc leader in the House of Commons to make it very clear to them that this will be on my signs. And you will be accused, rightfully so, Mr. Prime Minister, along with your colleagues on Parliament Hill, of this activity. The Reichstag fire decree, the decree suspended important provisions of the German Constitution, especially those safeguarding individual rights and freedoms and due process of law. Here are the restrictions. All of the people of Germany were restricted from right to assembly, restricted from freedom of speech, restricted from freedom of the press, a removal of all restraints on police investigations, free to arrest and incarcerate political opponents without specific charge, dissolve political organizations and suppress publications. Der Stürmer has done all that in the UK, every bit of it. And especially the portion down below here, free to arrest and incarcerate political opponents without specific charges, dissolve political organizations and suppress publications. Der Stürmer is guilty of that. Right to assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. These are all Nazi policies by this British leader. Unequivocally, I want to emphasize the point that what the UK is doing has nothing to do with Der Stürmer, having a under-the-table secret relationship with communist doctrine in Beijing. I'm sorry, that just doesn't exist. Justin Poilievre doesn't, right? Miss Landsman does not exist, period. Let me explain. The decree was used as the legal basis for imprisonment of anyone considered to be opponents of the Nazis and to suppress publications not considered friendly to the Nazi cause. It was one of the key steps in the establishment of a one-party Nazi state. The decree was not accompanied by any written guidelines from the Reich government. This omission gave wide latitude in interpreting the decree to the Nazi security. Now, here's the Nuremberg laws. But first, I'll read you the other part here. Reichstag Fire Decree Enabling Act. The Enabling Act was passed in both the Reichstag and Reichsstadt on March 23, 1933, and was signed by President von Hindenburg later that day. The act stated that it was to last 4 years unless reviewed by the Reichstag, which occurred twice. The law was enacted by the Reichstag meeting at the Kroll Opera House, where non-Nazi members were surrounded and threatened by members of the SA and SS. The communists had already been repressed and were not allowed to be present or to vote. And some social democrats were kept away as well. In the end, most of those present voted for the act, except for the social democrats who voted against it. Note that it was after the Reichstag fire that the independent security inside the Reichstag was eliminated in favor of SA security, which is what Canada's Parliament did years ago Harper eliminated independent security inside the House of Commons, and Mr. Harper brought in the RCMP. Same thing. RCMP, SAS, Gestapo, whatever you want to call it. Same thing. Random Nuremberg laws, random attacks on Jews and Jewish property. Police and courts no longer protect Jews. Jews no longer allowed electrical, optical equipment, bicycles, typewriters. Passports for Jews to travel abroad restricted. Jewish passports denied permanently. Jews' radios confiscated. Jews evicted from homes without reason. Jews forbidden to use the telephone. The new law designates Jews as subjects of the Reich. Psychiatric Nazi diagnosis for Jews for genocide. The Nazi High Command denies atrocities against Jews to the international community. That's it right there. So this is what Canada's doing, unequivocally. I've been saying this now for quite some time. If you go back and look at my video titled, that's 3 years old, Jennifer and Daniel Nazi Case Against Canada Government and Police. If you type that title into YouTube, that video will pop up right away. It's 3 years old, and that was 3 years ago. And at that time, there was no clear public indicators of neo-Nazi colonialism in the House of Commons. It just wasn't there. 3 years ago, the British government was not applying the Reichstag Fire Decree and the Enabling Act, and the restrictions was not there. Okay? So I was quite correct in telling the truth in that video. And again, the Wikipedia placed the Holocaust, their ad for the Holocaust on that video below. They only do that with Holocaust victims, with victims of Nazis. They did that for me, which means that Wikipedia believes what I said in the video, that Canada's governments have applied Nazi Nuremberg laws and restrictions against my wife and I. They believe me. In other words, Wikipedia is stating, by placing their ad within the page of my video, they're stating that you're a victim of neo-Nazism. That's what they're saying. They only apply it to victims. They only post their advertisement on Holocaust victims' statements on YouTube. That's where they post it, right on the main page of a Holocaust victims video. They did that for me, and I thank them for that. I tried to warn, over the years, I've tried to warn the Israeli government. I've done all I could to call the Israeli mission in New York, sometimes angry at them and screaming at them, while at the same time, trying to enforce in their minds that their Western allies that they knew in 1945, the British, the French, the Germans, Europe in general, the United States, Canada, that the compassion that they had is gone. That's over. They're reversing, going back to Nazi-right policies. Adolf Hitler, as you all know, one of his plans was to turn Canada, the United States, and the UK into Nazi states. I mean, this is quite well known, and Canada's doing just that, and so is the United States and Great Britain. So it's all Hitler's wanting to Nazify the world of the Western Hemisphere has happened. Although Russia and China are resisting this, which is quite correct for them to do. I have a couple of books here that prove our case. I have the book In the Garden of Beasts, which was written by Erik Larson. I have Hitler's Legacy, which is another book I highly suggest. And I'll be suggesting it on my signs in October. Of one sign indicating to the Canadian people, if you want proof that your parliament and police and courts are Nazified with criminals, recruited Nazi criminals, including judges on the bench and the Supreme Court, then go get these books and read them, highlight them, and get it in your minds that it's not Beijing or Communist China or President Xi or anything like that. These guys on Parliament Hill are criminals, and they have no right to occupy your House of Commons. They are criminals. Our case proves they're criminals. They have been building up for decades. They have been corrupt for decades. The Conservative and Liberal parties of Canada, nothing but corruption. And they commit crimes all the time. You just don't hear about them. They're committing crimes all the time against a selected targeted peoples in Canada. All the time they're doing this with their security. And unfortunately and sadly, Most of these cases, like our own, are being censored by the Trudeau government and the entire House of Commons. They are all in on this, and they're all guilty, and their security chieftains are guilty as well. In Canada, there used to be a form of respect that's gone. And let me explain to you what that is. There used to be a time when you were a victim of a crime. There was a fund set up to compensate you as victims of criminal acts. Okay, by the very governments and security that are committing the crimes now. They're doing it. And now there's no victims fund. Okay, for victims, there's no compensation. The government moved on the Supreme Court so that people could not get decisions by the Supreme Court when they sue the federal government for crimes. Somehow the federal government was able to change things at the Supreme Court, and now you cannot go there on a first appeal. Under charter violations. Remember that under the Charter of Civil Rights, it states that if you feel that your constitutional rights have been violated, you can seek out a remedy in any competent court. The Supreme Court of Canada was not ruled out in that statement. Any competent court includes a first appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. Now, the government violated that particular Charter of Civil Right by restricting the Supreme Court of Canada illegally, restricting them and bringing in rules so that you cannot make a first appeal to the competent Supreme Court of Canada. That's what they've done. The Supreme Court of Canada gives out this story about how you have to first appeal in the lower courts. And if the decisions are against you, you just slowly move up the ladder to the Supreme Court. Okay, that's a violation right there. Or you can only file for two reasons in the Supreme Court. You can file if you've been charged with a crime and you feel that your sentence was not appropriate. You can appeal to the Supreme Court. Okay. And let them make a ruling as to whether or not you were treated unfairly in sentencing as for criminal conduct. The other one is simply appeals of civil matters that come up through the lower courts. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that the Supreme Court of Canada has violated the Charter of Civil Rights. They were not disincluded in the civil right regarding seeking a remedy to charter violations through a competent court. They did not rule themselves out. Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and the provinces, as well as Her Majesty the Queen, did not indicate that the Supreme Court at all was a non-court where you could seek out a remedy due to competency. They did not rule the Supreme Court out. That's why it's not in the Charter. So really, the government and the Supreme Court are violating the Charter. Both of them are. And this explains why the justices on the Supreme Court refused to entertain our case under Charter violations. In our case, all of the Charter was violated. Every bit of it. Now, the government, see, here's the thing. The government now tries to bring in laws, okay, that violate the Charter. So what they're doing is, all of Parliament Hill, all of your parliamentarians, they are getting rid of the Charter. They're creating all these amendments and laws and bills, criminal bills to pass in the House of Commons, like Bill C-51 against you and your right of privacy on your devices can be hacked by neo-colonial Nazis and security. They basically are destroying the Charter, and that's unlawful. They cannot do that without the Queen's signature. But they can't. Only King Charles can recuse the Charter of Civil Rights, because regardless of what you think of King Charles or the royal family, Trudeau cannot violate the Charter legally without King Charles' signature to end the Charter of Civil Rights. King Charles has to sign it, because the royal family, in spite of them no longer really involved with Canada really at all. The bottom line is Trudeau and his parliament have been violating the Charter of Civil Rights, and they have not had permission from the royal family to do that, but they've gotten away with it because the royal family won't put the hammer down. Okay, that's the only reason why they've gotten away with it, but they can't do it because, and that's what I'm saying, they can't.
When?
Yeah, in 10 minutes.
Okay.
King Charles has to make a public statement recusing the Charter of Civil Rights. In other words, King Charles III has to come forward publicly. He has to sign a document, okay, for the government of Canada and give it to the Governor General for the Prime Minister, indicating that the Charter of Civil Rights has been eliminated. He has to do that. So he won't do that, which means that your government is guilty of passing laws against all of you and me and my wife that are illegal against the Crown. That's what it means. So I'll be posting that on one of my signs as well on my trailer. That's why I'm saying to all of you that, and eventually my videos will go public the right way, and I'm looking forward to that. That's why I'm saying to all of you that your governments on Parliament Hill are illegal. They're criminally illegal, okay? And they need to be locked up for violating the Charter of Civil Rights repeatedly. They have corrupted the Supreme Court of Canada with judges who are illegal as well, okay? The Chief Justice has the right, for example, of the Supreme Court of Canada, under certain terms, he can go to the Governor General and he can get a document sent to King Charles, okay, where the Supreme Court of Canada and its Chief Justice can indicate legally that Parliament Hill and all those elected in it are frankly criminally illegal, okay, and have committed crimes against the Canadian citizens by violating the Charter of Civil Rights. The Chief Justice does have the power to do that, okay? Somewhere in the chain of command, like the United States, in the event of war, for example, and the president and vice president of the United States get killed in such a war, if the House Speaker is still alive, the House Speaker is next in the chain of command to take over the presidency, okay, and then it goes on down the line from there. Well, Canada has a similar chain of command as well. Like, I believe that the Governor General of Canada is third in line for taking over the country in the event that Trudeau and his vice prime minister get killed. Then it goes to the Governor General. But somewhere down the line is the Chief Justice, okay, of Canada. Somewhere down that chain of command is the Chief Justice, I believe. I can't prove that, but I'm just saying that somewhere down the line he would take over the country. You need to understand that your governments are corrupt and criminals. You need to understand that for decades, the provinces of Ontario and Quebec and some other provinces for decades have been building up a mass empire of corrupted police and corrupted national security so that they could get away with committing crimes, okay? And that your governments are corrupt and dangerous to you, all of you, and the police are corrupt and dangerous to you, and your courts, believe me, are in criminal disrepute. You see, here's the thing. What I say is that Canada's provincial courts, superior courts, and the Supreme Court of Canada are in disrepute. Therefore, they cannot apply the law. They can't apply it criminally against people with criminal charges. They cannot apply it civilly neither. They can't, because they're in disrepute. You know, Canadians don't realize it only takes one case, to prove that your courts are in disrepute. It only takes one. That'll be in my signs, and I'll give somewhat of a clear, brief explanation in the best one-line phrases I can come up with that are short and you'll get the picture very quickly. Your courts are in disrepute. They are not legal. Your judicial system, Canadians, is not legal. It's illegal. Your Supreme Court is illegal. Your provincial governments are illegal. Your entire parliament here in Ottawa are all illegal. Okay? They are criminals. They do not have diplomatic immunity. They only have diplomatic immunity because the police are covering up all their activities. And they're covering up all the police's illegal activities as well. And the courts are doing the same thing. That's what you need to understand. The government of Canada, the provinces and their legislatures, along with the federal government and their legislatures, they have given themselves diplomatic immunity illegally. They don't have it. The problem is you'll be hard pressed to find a law enforcement official who wants to criminally charge all of them on Parliament Hill through Crown Counsel, numerous criminal charges for violations of the Charter, illegally placing Canadians under surveillance. I'm just telling you, it's a big, big thing, okay? I stress to you people in Canada, we need an interim government and an interim leader, and these people need to be locked up on Parliament Hill. Locked up, okay? We need an interim government and an interim leader, I don't know, appointed by the UN or King Charles III or whatever, and we need an interim prime minister where their duty will be to primarily shut down Parliament, run Parliament with no opposition, and investigate, first of all, arrest and incarcerate all of the politicians on Parliament Hill and criminally charge them for high treason against the Canadian people. They've also, and I repeat this, they have stolen from you Canadians hundreds of millions of dollars illegally, stolen it from you, okay? They lie about, they cook, the federal government, provinces are cooking their financial books. What does cooking mean? Well, it means they're making entries into all the money they collect from Canadians, and where that money goes, they're lying, is what I'm saying. They've cooked the books. So they're also guilty of financial fraud against the Canadian people for hundreds of millions of dollars. We have 33 million people in this country, or 35. Those Canadians who've been here, 25, 30 years, each one of them is entitled to at least $1 million in compensation from a new government of Canada, because your government has robbed you of all your money. They have robbed you of an apartment. They have robbed you of food. They have robbed you of your homes. They have robbed you of your cars and vehicles. They are robbing you. Them and not just them. They're all involved to some degree with corporate businesses in our country and CEOs of companies that control our retail market. And between the two of them, they have been robbing all of you blind. Okay, literally. The Canadian people, they've been robbing you and robbing you and robbing you and stealing from you. And that's a crime as well. So these are reasons why we need an interim government, and I'll lay out the reasons in my signs, and every citizen in Ottawa and international member states will read my signs. And I'm going to keep going out there until people come to me and agree with me. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build up a support network, and that should hopefully work. We requested $10 million in compensation from the government. They know why. You know why, Trudeau. And Paul, you both know why. Stephen Harper knows why. Dalton McGuinty knows why, don't you? Doug Ford knows why, right? Don't you? And they refused to comply. Also, we requested the return of our two children, Sebastian George Fitzgerald, born July 11, 2007, and our daughter, Lara Danielle Fitzgerald, born on July 17th, 2006, in BC's Grace Hospital. We've requested the federal government and the province hand them over. It's that simple. It's simple for us. It's frankly simple. They're refusing to comply. All right? So these are problems, and I'm going to go out there and tell the Canadian people. Your government privatizes your videos. When you have criminal evidence against the state and the security and the courts and the elected, they zero in on you, and they come at you from every direction. They censor you completely. They block your evidence from leaving the country. They run to corrupted NATO states like Germany, France, the United States, the UK, to help them cover up your case. That's what they did to us. It's quite big, isn't it? Right? If you Canadians think that you can go outside the country to the ICC, if you look up the Rome Statutes and try and have your government criminally charged, I'm going to tell you something right now. It's almost an impossibility. Because the federal government of Canada, their NATO allies are very corrupted as well, and have been for a long time. When the Canadian government's very existence is in danger as a result of one or two cases in Canada, okay, when their very legitimacy is going to be destroyed, okay, and those few citizens in our country with cases big enough can destroy them at the UN, that's when Canada runs to their allies, NATO allies, and the big one is the United States and Washington, and they get assisted in covering up your case against them so that they cannot be jailed for what they've done, all of them, and Parliament closed down and an interim government put in its place. That's what they do. They did that to us. You know, it's one thing for them to get away with it internally in the country, but you Canadians who think that you can go to the High Commission of Human Rights or you can appeal to the Chief Justice at the ICC and have your case reviewed and acted upon, listen to me. Forget it, because the ICC is all run by NATO countries. Most of the judges appointed at the ICC, unfortunately, are by NATO. Okay, and the prosecutor there, Khan, Basuda, these are all pro-NATO, really. Except in the case of Israel, that's where there's a bit of a difference. Mind you, Khan is investigating 32 cases right now. The prosecutor for the ICC. Before I go, they state the ICC's website on Google. I went into it recently, and this prosecutor states that you can send them attachments, videos, even by link to him. The problem is that the list of you have to provide what country you're from. And there's a box in that particular application to the court to send a link to the prosecutor, like a video link. And there's a box that state that where you have to pick which country of origin you're sending the link from. Okay, when you hit the arrows on the right of that box and there's a list of nations, well, Canada, the United States, Germany, Britain, and France are not included. They're not there. Bingo. And you can't leave your area code and phone number and the country of origin unless you pick one of those countries. Why, Prosecutor Khan, are you doing that? Why are you not putting the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Germany, and France, and other European countries? Why are they not listed so that I can send you a link, Mr. Prosecutor? I will call the ICC at some point, the prosecutor's office. I will give them a call at some point. I just don't know when yet. And I'm going to address this issue. I also want to address the issue with them when I make the phone call. That the warrant for the arrest of President Vladimir Putin is really ridiculous and incredibly corrupt. Here, we have the president of the Russian Federation, who's not guilty of any war crimes at all. He's not guilty of anything. And they put a warrant out for his arrest, and yet Khan and the Chief Justice of the ICC, and Mr. Khan, you seem to have a problem putting a warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu. What happened? What's your excuse? Well, we'll see. We'll see what Mr. Khan does. The ICC claimed it would take a couple of months because NATO states who are Nazified have recruited Benjamin Netanyahu into the new Nazi empire and are protecting him by sending appeals to the ICC so that so they're stalling the warrant for his arrest, is what I'm saying. That's what they're doing. Now, Khan says that the ICC says, well, as soon as these appeals by Germany, France, and the UK, for examples, right? As soon as these appeals are moved out of the court, then he's going to send out the warrant. Why did he send out the warrant to begin with? Why did Mr. Khan and the ICC decide to wait? They decide to wait so that these Western countries who've helped the U.S. commit genocide, helped Israel commit genocide, the British sending military cargo planes to Israel, supplying them with weapons and bombs to kill Palestinian children. The U.S. doing the same. Germany backing him up. France backing him up. These are Nazi states. They've brought Israel and its Zionist, filthy government, Nazi recruits, into the new Nazi Reich fold. That's what they've done. So I'm going to go now. Shalom. God bless. I wish you all a very safe Sabbath. I'm a Christian Jew. Sort of a Orthodox Christian Jew, but I'm one of those tough Christians. I'm not one of those Christians that sit back and I leave praying at nighttime to Jesus Christ and God. I leave that on my pillow when I lay my head down to rest, and my kippah usually in my pocket. That's when I pray to them. Okay? God indeed does not like it when Christians sit in their rear ends, and Jews who know better sit on their rear ends, okay, and are lazy and don't care about their government strangling them. They don't care. Strangling you financially, stealing your money, committing treason, illegal diplomatic immunity by corrupting the courts and the police. Okay, that's the only reason why these scumbags on Parliament Hill are not in jail right now. Okay, and this position's being maintained, and I'm going to try and change all that. We'll see. Shalom, God bless. Have a nice day.